Okay, we are live. Doris, you could begin.
Okay, the meeting has come to, this is the zoning land use committee meeting of 2000, February 16th. And the first item on our agenda is a presentation by the Fifth Avenue bid.
Hello, everyone.
Michael Devine, we turn it over to you.
Great. Hello. How's it going, everyone? My name is Michael Devine. I'm the Avenue NYC program manager for the Fifth Avenue bid. And obviously, a lot of you all know me from working at the board as well. But since we're on YouTube, for people that don't know, I'm on the board as well. So I'm going to be sharing with you the final, our final commercial district needs assessment that we had produced. I was wondering, Josephine, can you give me a capacity to?
Yes, you can share. Yes.
Okay, great. Now let's see, how do I do that? Share. And then, oh, there we go. I see that. I click share. Can you see? You can see the slideshow, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me just make it full. Okay, great. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of background, I remember I was here about a year ago giving the presentation for the preliminary findings for this report. So I just want to give you just a little bit of reminder. So that we made this report in partnership with the NYC Department of Small Business Services as part of the Avenue NYC grant. And the first part of the grant was to produce this commercial district needs assessment, which is basically to give us the ability to get capture a lot of data about our commercial corridors in Bay Ridge, specifically Fifth Avenue, 3rd Avenue, 86th Street, and then a couple of the corridors south of 86th Street. And the idea was that by capturing all this data about the commercial corridors, the health of the corridors, it would help the Bay Ridge bid help inform how we created programming for our avenue. And also, I mean, this report is open for everybody. So we are sharing this report with the community board, with other organizations, and hopefully other folks all throughout the neighborhood could use this report for any other ways that they're serving the community. And since I kind of got into the data about a year ago, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds with the data again. I just want to give sort of a brief overview of what the finalized report looks like and some of the data points. And then I want to talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that the bid is doing as a result of the data that we've captured with the CDNA. And then also I want to, at the end, sort of open it up to folks on the committee to talk about how CB10 could conceivably use some of this data and how, how we can, as a board, this can benefit us using it. Basically, the CDNA is broken up into about 7 different sections. Inside, you'll find that we have a section that highlights the business landscape. We have some data information on what merchants are saying, some additional data from third-party providers of data about the business outlook, more surveys from shoppers about what they're saying. We did a lot of observations of the streetscape and the physical environment in the districts. And then from all of that data, we put together some of our key findings and opportunities that we're going to be using for our programming, and other folks hopefully will use as well. And of course, there's the appendix at the end, which has additional information about demographics and how people are employed in Bay Ridge and some other data points like that. So the first section, the business landscape, one of the main features of that section, we did a business inventory looking at, basically counted all the businesses on those corridors I mentioned earlier and categorized them into about 20 different categories so we can see what we had a lot of, what we had a little of, and I looked at about 1,142 of these storefronts. And at that time, this was back in 2019 in the fall. This vacancy rate for all of Bay, or for the 4 corridors in Bay Ridge that I looked at, was about 6%. The next section that we had in the report was what merchants say. And this was based on a lot of the survey information. I surveyed about 150 of the merchants, and this was door to door. I literally went and talked to them face to face and got a lot of this information from them. And let's see. So there's about 20 questions in the survey. Some of the data points we asked them was about, how many years they were in business, the number of employees they have, do they rent, do they own, some of the resources that they were looking for that would help them. We asked them generally how was business, whether it was going up or down, and what they thought the district needed to attract more shoppers. And those were some of the questions, and I highlighted some here. Also, just so you know, at the end of this presentation, I'll put a link in the chat where you can access the full report if you didn't get it through the email. Okay, the next section, we did the business outlook, which was, this was some data that we received from third-party providers about retail leakage and surplus. And what that means, that shows where residents in Bay Ridge, where they're spending their money. And what this shows is that, there's a lot of these different categories. There's folks are spending their money outside of Bay Ridge. There's only a couple of categories at the bottom of there where they're spending more of their money within the neighborhood than outside the neighborhood. So that says, there's opportunity there to try, depending on what kinds of services we provide here in the neighborhood, trying to attract and capture more of those consumers within the neighborhood that are living here. We also did our consumer survey. This is our what shoppers say. This consisted of, let's see, we surveyed about 346 residents in the neighborhood. We did this through social media and online polling. We also went to a lot of public events and did surveys there. We shared it with a lot of other organizations who put the surveys out. And the survey was pretty short. It was only about 13 questions. And some of the things we asked people in the neighborhood is what kinds of businesses they typically visit, what kinds of businesses they would like to see in the neighborhood. How do they get to their preferred shopping corridor in Bay Ridge, whether they walk or they take a bike or the bus. What are the neighborhoods are they shopping in besides Bay Ridge, and how much are they spending? And also asking them what they think the districts need to attract more shoppers to the neighborhood. And we had some choice quotes here. And, a lot of this additional information is within the report that you can look at. Let's see, we also did a lot of streetscape observations throughout the neighborhood. We looked at the storefront conditions. So based on the Department of Small Business Services, they have a guide on how to rank the appearance of a storefront, whether it's good, fair, or poor. And based on their sort of characteristics of what that means, I sort of looked at all the stores and graded them. We also looked at the sidewalk conditions, whether there's a lot of cracks in the sidewalks, whether there's a lot of congestion at certain parts of the sidewalks. We looked at the tree pits. We looked at the street lighting. We looked at the quality of the street furniture. Additionally, we looked at the roadbed conditions. So where was there a lot of double parking happening? Where were there a lot of potholes? How were the crosswalks? Were they fading or were they non-existent? So we sort of summarized that within the report, what some of the hot spots are within the neighborhood. And then really the next section is the crux of this whole report. And I know it's a little small on the screen here, but if you go to the final report, you can read a little bit easier. But the whole crux of this, of collecting all this data, is to come up with our key findings and opportunities, and what we think are the strengths of the neighborhood, what we think the challenges of the neighborhood are, and what are the opportunities. And because this is so small, I'll just pick out a few to read to you and give you an idea from each of these categories without going through all of them. So for strengths, for example, we found that Bay Ridge has a high level of civic engagement and volunteerism. That's definitely a strength within our neighborhood. We have a lot of historic anchor businesses that have been here for a long time. We have a relatively low vacancy rate compared to other neighborhoods within the city. We have a lot of great dining, as you all know. We have pretty good transportation connectivity in terms of buses. We're served by buses and the subway. And we have a lot of diversity in this neighborhood, and we see that as a strength. In terms of a couple of the challenges, there's amongst the residents, there's this perceived lack of business diversity, that there's not enough different kinds of businesses within the neighborhood. We also found that a lot of the smaller businesses have sort of minimal online presence. They don't know how to use social media that well. They don't have websites. Of course, the big one we always hear in basically every meeting we ever have with the community board is that there's lack of parking, or there's parking issues. So that was a pretty common thing to hear. There was a lot of speeding. We heard that from folks. And another thing we heard was that there was insufficient compliance with the regulations in regards to the business owners, how they dealt with their trash, were they sweeping enough, all sorts of different variables included with that. And then for the opportunities, I'll just read off a couple of those as well. We saw there was an opportunity to partner with more of the property owners and the realtors to attract new types of businesses within the neighborhood, since this was a challenge. We saw that as something that we can work on more to, maybe fill in some of these vacancies that were temporary vacancies and maybe put pop-ups in them. Another idea was sort of highlighting a lot of the diversity and cultural assets in the neighborhood. This is something we have, we have a good amount of in the neighborhood, a lot of diversity, and we think it's something we can capitalize on to market the neighborhood better. Let's see, there's definitely an opportunity to provide more of this digital marketing assistance to the merchants. We see that as something that's very important. Taking advantage of the ferry is another thing. Once things get going and people are going to come visiting the neighborhoods more, we have this ferry that can bring people from, all different parts of the city into Bay Ridge. And also our arts community. We saw this as another opportunity. We have this burgeoning arts community that not a lot of people know about, but it's definitely something that's here that we've discovered. And they're more than willing to participate in things, and they want to participate in putting on events and various things within the neighborhood. So based on these findings, some of this summary of the findings, the Bay Ridge bid, we've started doing some various initiatives to address some of these things we found out in the report. So I think some of you all know we have Arts on the Avenue, which is the bench project that we did, where we painted about, I think, 11 benches along Fifth Avenue. We connected with a lot of the local artists, and some of them helped arrange, sort of collaborating and putting this all together. Another initiative that we're working on, we did a pilot on back in October, was called Street Moments. And this is particularly good during this time when we don't have our street festivals going anymore because of the pandemic. So we did a little pop-up event, like a little art walk that was very small, it was only on one corner. And we're thinking of trying to get the community more involved, to approach us if they have ideas for little pop-up events on the sidewalks or on the corners that can be small and like what I call them tactical takeovers, and they can be like, a 2-hour thing where something pops up and just to enliven the area. Another project we started on was focused on Fifth. This is where we're giving direct assistance to the merchants to help them with their social media and develop websites for them. We had a consultant come in last year who was helping with us during the pandemic. She was helping out some of our merchants, and she did some training with me, and now I'm actually doing a lot of the work with the merchants, one-on-one assistance to help them with their social media. Another project that I'm working on now, it's not up and running yet, but it's something we're sort of designing, is our real estate dashboard, where we're thinking of having on our website where we highlight some of the vacancies on the avenue, and make it a tool for folks to be able to contact the property owners, to get information about those vacancies. And another feature that I'd like to include is sort of crowdsourcing from the community to get ideas about what people would like to see in some of those vacant spaces. So if there's some sort of feature within the dashboard where people can type in their ideas about what they want to see in a specific space, that's something I'm sort of thinking about. Another thing that Amanda's been kind of working on is trying to get more volunteers to work with the bid. And I'm sort of thinking a little bit more broadly about how we can do this and maybe partner with, since we have all of these great organizations and a lot of them are calling on volunteers to help them with certain things, if there was a way to sort of mobilize the different organizations into, more under one umbrella and have them share their sort of volunteer resources with each other. Definitely the community board, we're all volunteers, so that, obviously we're part of that. But, there's a lot of great organizations like AAANY and Yama and the Stand For Gallery. So there's a lot of these folks that I think, if we can organize them a bit, we can sort of create an army of volunteers that's a little bit more organized, that can, that can spread out and help other organizations that they don't normally help out as well. And then another initiative we've been working on is just sort of this ongoing merchant collaboration and cross promotions. And I'm sure some of you have seen some of the things we've been doing. For example, like for Valentine's Day, we were doing our sort of dating game, our merchant dating game promotion, where we had, I think, about 10 or 11 different businesses participating in that. We did some stuff for Halloween with our virtual costume contest. We had about 4 or 5 businesses involved with that. So the idea is to, sort of promote the district, but also promote multiple businesses at once for sort of an overarching promotion, where people could, win prizes, where they have to go into the stores to participate. So we've been trying to, get more collaboration amongst the businesses in that way. And then a final thing, we're just sort of exploring a little bit. We're not too deep into it. Is looking at the New York State Main Streets grant, which can be used. If we were to apply for it, it could be potentially used to help storefront improvements. There's a lot to this grant, and we're still sort of learning about what is involved with it. We're going to be talking to some other organizations who have applied for this grant to get an idea of what that would take and how it could conceivably work in Bay Ridge. So as you can see, this is just sort of a sampling of some of the initiatives that we've done in the past year and what we have coming up in the next year. And all this ties into what, some of the key findings we had in the report. So I think the next big step is what I see now. I'm taking off my bid hat and putting on my community board hat. And, I'd like to open it up to discussion to folks to see, how possibly, if anybody has ideas about how the community board could, use some of this data, how we can look at it, if there's certain initiatives that we can, help inform what we're doing as a community board. So I don't know if folks have any ideas, if you've all looked at the report. I'll open it up, and then I got some ideas of my own, but I've been talking for 10 minutes straight, so I'm going to zip it up a little bit.
Well, I read the report, and I think you summarized it and emphasized the most important points. And the next step is tough, and I think we might need a little time to consider it. But this is the right time for anybody to throw out an idea.
Yeah.
Yes, Anne.
I wonder, Michael, if some of the vacant stores, and I know that there might be a liability factor to this, but if those stores could be made useful to showcase a volunteer organization and what they do. For example, let's just take Bravo for a minute. Might use it like there's the pop-up concept in malls that have vacant spaces. If there could be a pop-up, let's say for Bravo, where free blood pressures are done on that week or day or month. I was thinking even public schools could showcase, for example, an on-site art class with their art teacher.
Ooh.
People could maybe just look in the window and see activity. I don't know, maybe the Guild might sell some products that the kinds of things that they sell at White Elephant sales or whatever. So just, I was thinking, what inspired me to think about that is your pop-up concept about a corner outdoor thing. Maybe some of those could be done inside as well.
Absolutely, I love all those ideas. Those are excellent ideas. But yeah, the reason I went for the outdoors because of the pandemic, so, but,
Oh, true.
but yeah, like hopefully, down the road, 6 months or a year from now, when things are cooling down a little bit with the pandemic, I love these ideas for using the spaces in that way. And I know Amanda, she had mentioned she's had some ideas about, even if you couldn't go in the store, using the windows of the store for putting some sort of artwork in it,
Yeah.
and that would decrease the sort of liability issue because you don't have to have sort of people in there for longer periods. I mean, all the liability has to get sorted out, and you have to think through how that would work. But that's another idea we were thinking of, just sort of using the windows for something, instead of just sitting there doing nothing.
And I would like to say that I think the Fifth Avenue bid has done a very good job of working with local artists. And I think if with this, as we go forward, if we can have a better platform to promote local artists and local businesses together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Josh, Dean and Steve have their hands raised also.
Yeah, that's me. Michael, the one thing that seems to be missing when you speak about it, and what you've never addressed, what I call the 800-pound gorilla, which is Amazon. That if you go along Fifth Avenue, you go along Third Avenue, In fact, while we were on here, I decided I would look and found out that I can get a can of paint from Benjamin Moore paint from Amazon, like in a day or less, depending upon the circumstances. And I don't know how somebody like a local paint store competes with that, other than the restaurants, which seem to have this down pretty well. And of course, they can't. Amazon can't compete with them, although it does to an extent. Is there any reason why we can't come up with something that would be like a local Amazon or something of that nature, where if you wanted to get, bagels from a shop on Fifth Avenue and say in the 90s, that I could get them like quicker than I could get them from California through Amazon? I mean, something along those lines that would help the community literally compete. For example, if you just take the paint store, the thing that I'm talking about, if we had something where they could actually get the paint to somebody's house, which you never get right now, but you could get it to their house within an hour or within 2 hours. Now, I know this is, like it's a difficult thing to compete with, but if you think of it as a neighborhood Amazon, as a community board Amazon, and you worked on that kind of a project, it might actually help a lot of things, parking, everything else like that. Okay. And so I just think it's an idea that I haven't heard before, but I think it's something that's worthwhile thinking about. Is this possible? Can we put some computer people together? Call it Bramazon, Bay Ridge Amazon, whatever, I don't care, right? But I think that it is something that is worthwhile thinking about. It certainly works with the food deliverers. I think it could work on a greater scale if you had something like that the bid thought about.
Sure. I mean, definitely we've heard this before. That's definitely been something that's come up. Amazon is continuously, I've heard that from basically every merchant I talk to. I've seen a couple of things. One, I don't remember the name of it, but there was an initiative that some organization was putting together where, they were doing just that. They were putting together a platform with all like local stores who would sign up for it.
It's just in Carroll Gardens. It was just in the paper. There's a startup that does just that, and they're looking to expand in Brooklyn. I just read that recently.
Yeah, so it might be the same one as that. So that's something we can, instead of I can definitely look into like what they're doing, and it might be the kind of thing where we don't have to reinvent the wheel. If that's something that's already working, we can then sort of recruit them and say, hey, we want to have this in Bay Ridge. But it's from what I understand, it's similar to what you're saying. So it's like the stores would have to sign up for it. They would have to sort of create like a little thing, their own little place within the platform. So when you go shopping as a Bay Ridge resident, you log on, and then it will break down all the different stores by the category of the store within your area, and then you can order from them.
Yep, Michael, what I'm thinking of along these lines is like if the bid was to do this itself, that way, if somebody comes up with this idea independently and then starts charging the merchants for it, it would be much better if the bid did it as part of its process for all the merchants, and just something along those lines. Because if you charge, if you're gonna have to pay extra to send it out, like to get those bagels there in 20 minutes, then they're paying. And what I'd like to see is like at the bid itself. I mean, they're being, everybody's contributing the money there. Maybe if it worked that way, it would really work even better for the merchants. That's all.
That's definitely an idea. A problem that I foresee could being a problem, even with this other platform I was talking about, is to get even the merchants to get on that platform is in of itself another obstacle. That's not to say it's impossible or it shouldn't be attempted. I'm just saying I know from experience just helping business get on Facebook, and they can't even find their login information for a Gmail account. It's like to be able to put your store on a platform, it definitely needs some hand-holding. But you're right, down the line, you don't want, if somebody's already creating this platform, they might turn it around, a year from now and start charging, And we all know about like Seamless and Grubhub and all these places that are, yes, they're getting exposure to a lot of the restaurants, but they're also taking a huge cut out of what they're paying. But there's people starting to catch on to that, and it's definitely could be something we can look into. I suspect putting together a platform like that would be pretty expensive, but if there's other places we can get grant money to help fund that, because that's, you're looking at like computer science experts to do that. But it's also, I fear doing that and not getting enough people to sign on to participate on it, meaning the merchants and or the residents. So it's something that that's, you know, it's because it is an idea I considered, but it made me a little fearful to go and invest that amount of energy into something if people aren't going to use it. You know, so I think a crucial element of it is the marketing of it and being able to get the merchants on it and then marketing it to the residents in the neighborhood and making sure that they're definitely going to use it. It's not just another platform to go onto, because there's so many competing platforms. There's tons of them, you know, but definitely I got
I
your
would like to
idea.
add something.
Yep.
But I think one of the marketing things that could be included is reducing your carbon footprint.
Right.
You're not having trucks coming from Amazon's warehouse in Sunset Park, in Red Hook. You're having local things. It's less of a carbon footprint. And I think there are enough people in our community that care about that. Because we care about our air and our future and our children's future. Dean, I think you're up there.
Mhm. Dean?
Yeah, I saw you.
Yes.
So I want to follow up before I get to my question on what Steve is saying. And I've said this before, if merchants could, you know, the biggest thing for a merchant is to get all their merchandise on their webpage. They need pictures. They got, you know, it's a big job to do. If you could get funding to help merchants do that, I'm sure people would go on and order from local merchants. You know, the food is easy. It's already there. The menus are there. If we had, and this would not apply to everybody, but you know, Katie's little thrift shop, if they had all their things inventoried where somebody would go on and be able to look, that would work beautifully. And not a lot of stores could use it, but I think that would help. But I want to get to my other point. One, I read through your report, the single biggest comment from merchants and shoppers was not enough parking. So I just want to ask a question and then make a comment. Josephine, how many side streets do you think we have metered parking on? Do we have any idea?
Side streets, no. Some are, some aren't. It depends on the location and the overlay. Typically, if the overlay is short, there hasn't been.
So this is my comment on that. It might be a good conversation to have in committee to look at that, because if we add, and this is, I'm going opposite what I've said in the past, but if we added, you know, 3 metered spots on each side of the street during business hours, if that is a real problem that people are commenting on, it would at least help address that. I mean, that's something positive we could do. I don't know how many blocks are involved. I don't know of the blocks that, you know, don't have it that are eligible, but that was the one thread I saw the most comments on, not enough parking. And again, by the merchants and by the, you know, shoppers. So I think we should at least look at that. And if we could add, you know, 60, 70 metered spots, would it help? I don't know, but I think it's worth having the conversation.
You know, what's funny about that, Dean, is definitely, yeah, that's something that's been throughout the report, is the parking issue. But what is also funny about is when you look at the, you know, the consumer survey, and they ask how do you get to the corridor that you shop at? Almost overwhelmingly, they walk.
That's what they say.
Yeah, so there's definitely like a disconnect between there's folks that are definitely walking to their corridor, and then obviously other folks are driving. But you know, according to the survey, you know, it's saying people walk, but it's also saying there's not enough parking. So I don't, you know, it's tricky as to what that disconnect means. I'm not really sure.
Maybe they do.
If I could just, I think what Dean is saying though is absolutely a great idea to talk about, because the reason people answer that they walk is because they can't park. So if you really think about it, you know, which comes first, the chicken or the egg?
And as someone who lives on the far side, I live on 99th Street. So to get to any of the stores in the heart of the Fifth Avenue Business District, that's a long walk. And we usually, when we go there, we usually drive. And we are very specific about when we go there so that we can park.
Anne?
I was wondering, Michael, if you have any inside information about the fate of the Century 21 site and the other large box vacancies on 86th Street, which I think, you know, we always wish that those were smaller and, you know, enterprises, et cetera, but it really feels like such a cannonball hole in the retail fabric. I was wondering what you know or were thinking about that.
I don't have any insider information about what will be there. And it's unfortunate that those places are vacant, but a part of me also, you know, the positive side of me sees it as an opportunity of like, as to what else could show up there. There's going to be an empty space, and if there's someone that has some money and wants to move into the space, it could be something new and fresh to bring into the neighborhood. So, but now, you know, I don't have any inside information on what's going on there. Maybe Josephine, I don't know if you know something I don't.
No, I mean, I have spoken to Patrick Condren from the 86th Street bid. He does check in with me regularly. And I think the 86th Street bid is also, you know, excited about the prospect of many new businesses looking at the available real estate, and optimistic that we may see many more different stores along 86th Street, retail, you know, chains and businesses that have expressed an interest. You know, that he's hearing about. Didn't go into specifics, but you know, he feels that there's going to, you know, with the strong pedestrian, the intermodal hub there, that's attractive retail space. Again, the environment, while the fiscal climate is very challenging, you know, as we all know, he does believe that we'll start to see some tenants and some announcements, you know, hopefully within the next few months.
Steve, do you
Fingers
have your
crossed.
hand up, or is that an old hand up?
That's my old hand.
Okay, put your hand down, Steve.
Amanda, you had your hands up earlier. I don't know if you.
Oh, yeah, actually, it was just coming kind of back to the point, and I think that Michael did really explain this very well. We love the idea of having a very neighborhood-centric way to compete with Amazon, and we have looked at different platforms. I think one of the ways that the community board could help, that maybe we could get this moving in a direction that could start making it possible, is if we could galvanize the community behind the idea of maybe people signing a pledge that they would sign up, or that I will be a shopper on, and that we could present that to the businesses. Because frankly, what the businesses are dealing with right now is so difficult for them. The idea of them trying to do another lift and get onto a new platform and update things, and when they're having, in some cases, a hard time just managing their day-to-day with all the things going on. I think they would need to see what that benefit would be and understand that it's actually that the customer base is there for them. So I would love to kind of continue with that conversation and think about ways that we could all work together to make that more of a reality.
I think that's an important concept, and we'll have to see how we can develop that. I'm not sure that's community board function, but it could be a joint function.
But just to follow up on that with a comment, no matter what surveys we do, a small business owner, which is usually the proprietor and maybe one or two employees, would be extremely hard pressed at best to inventory, take pictures, do all of these things.
Right.
If we were serious about that, we'd have to look to get some financing to help them develop their business onto that platform, and then they could run with it. But to think a small business person is going to be able to do that on their own, I don't see that happening. So I think some kind of financing, somebody going in there and doing it for them, but that would help tremendously, I think.
Interesting point.
I don't see anybody else with hands up, so I wanted to bring up something outside of what's been brought up already. I've been doing a little bit of research on other community boards in Brooklyn. I think there's 18 community boards in Brooklyn. And from what I saw at least 12 of them, if not a few more, as per what I can find on their websites. At least 12 of them have economic development committees on the community board. And so when we're having this conversation here, I'm loving this because we're talking about things that, a lot of times we don't get to talk about in our meetings with the committees that we have, because this is specifically about economic development and those sort of issues in the community. I propose that, if there's a way we can think about implementing and having an economic development committee brought to the community board. And I realize that there's sort of like a lot of logistical things about that. What would be the scope of what they're supposed to look at? Would that mean they take some duties from other committees and do those, or do they do entirely different things? But I strongly recommend, I think this is something that we don't have here in Bay Ridge, and something that we do need, especially considering we have 3rd Avenue, we have 5th Avenue, we have 86th Street. And then on top of that, we have the pandemic. But even before the pandemic, I think, this is something that we needed that we don't have. So I don't know, what everybody here thinks of that, what the temperature is on that. I spoke to Josephine a little bit about it. I figured I'd bring it up and see what you all thought about it.
And it's Doris. I think that's a very interesting concept, and we'll consider it. But my son lives downtown. He's been living, he and his family living in Cobble Hill, and they have a little brochure that they hand out, and it's probably 3 by 6, and it's a list of local businesses that sometimes when you store, it's there, and you look and I didn't know that was there. I didn't know that was there. So to have a little handout that lets us know what more is available in our community that we didn't know was 2 blocks away because we don't walk in that direction. And if I might have one in my house, and I will look for it at that.
Sure. I mean, we have,
because that's a very low tech thing to help.
Yeah.
Local
I mean,
businesses.
we've so we on the higher tech, we have a map on our website which has all that. But the thing with printing, we can certainly easily print a brochure or a list of all the businesses. That would have to get reprinted 4 times a year because that's how much turnover there is. So,
Right.
but that's something we can easily do, and we do have, like I said, we have a version of that on the website where you can actually go into a map and pick by category, like, oh, I want to see all of the grocery stores, and then it'll just pop up on the map all the grocery stores with their website. But yeah, I mean, that's something we can do. But sorry, you were going to say something, Ann?
Yeah, on your website, you have the listing in categories. I was wondering if that you might also consider a concept of virtual browsing. One of the things that's lovely about local shopping is maybe you don't know what you want. Maybe you just kind of want to look around. Could maybe some of these merchants could have a virtual walk through the store?
Absolutely. I love that idea. And we're already experimenting with different types of short videos that we have, so like that is definitely something that's on the radar that I've been thinking about doing. I've seen different types of those on YouTube, and it's pretty easy to do. That's definitely something we can try and figure out a cool way to present to folks.
Yeah, because you may know that you may assume what the hardware store sells, but you may not know that they sell birdhouses that you could put together or whatever else.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
I do. I think it's great.
It works with what we've been talking about all together.
Yeah.
No, I definitely like that idea. And Michael, getting to the idea about an economic development, I haven't had the opportunity to speak to Lori yet about it. But I definitely think it's something that could be brought to the executive committee for, really some in-depth, discussion about it. And, a number of years ago, We had talked about, bringing some of the businesses together on various issues, whether it was valet parking, or some of the, restaurant, needs and changes to sidewalk cafe rules and regulations, which I know are coming up. The whole advent of, open streets and open restaurants, and, there's going to be changes in the zoning text as it relates to sidewalk cafes. So I think, having a way to formally reach out to businesses and hear from them, maybe an important, line that we haven't done in some time. And it just may be timely, given the pandemic has had such an impact, not only to Bay Ridge businesses, but also as we go out further into Dyker Heights, Bay Ridge Avenue, 4th Avenue, 11th Avenue, 13th Avenue, up into Fort Hamilton at, beyond 86th Street, past the 86th
Yes.
Street bid. There may be certainly issues that merchants who are not as organized as the 5th Avenue bid may want to have an outlet, or a way to just speak about some of the, city government related issues that they may be experiencing as well. Dean?
Yeah, normally I wouldn't be a big fan of this because, businesses don't need somebody else telling them what to do. They're overloaded with ideas. I'm going to say we're unique, but maybe we're not. But in Bay Ridge, every one of us here knows every president of 5th Avenue, 3rd Avenue. We know the individuals, they know us. So it's really a nice relationship. So maybe, they would welcome suggestions from a committee or from the board, because we do have a unique, relationship with the people that are in charge of the bids. So it might be something that could work. I don't know.
And, I would add, this is not about, I don't see it at all as telling businesses what to do. This is trying to come up with ideas about how to help the business.
Help the businesses.
Obviously there's the practical matters of, sometimes there's bad actors, but it's more about, constructive conversations about how we can promote economic development in a healthy way in Bay Ridge for our corridors. That's the way I look at it. And yeah, we have folks on 3rd Avenue, we have 5th Avenue, and, we try and communicate, and but there's not as much, I don't think there's as much coordination or collaboration as there should be between these different entities. And I think having it formalized as a committee on the community board will give it a lot more legitimacy and sort of organize and bring that kind of see it.
Anne and Stephanie?
Oh, sorry. Well, also, our emphasis is usually the resident, protecting the homeowner, protecting the resident. And I think it's time to broaden that to care more about the merchants as well. Just curious, was there any part of your questionnaire that asked the store owners if they also lived in Bay Ridge?
I think there was, and there was a good percentage of them that do. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Hey, yes, the hardware store sells build your own bird cage or whatever, birdhouse, things that you wouldn't expect, but advertising in that manner through the big website.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think we try and do that since the newsletter is monthly, so it's hard to sort of aggregate all the specials within a month. They tend to be, they move around, they change quickly. So what we've been doing now is we're sort of on top of it, and we promote it on social media pretty much, daily if we see something. If there's something big that we're working with the merchant on to promote a bunch of businesses, then we usually put it in the newsletter. But yeah, I'm always open to ideas about, ways of getting as much of those promotions into a newsletter as possible. So I'll try and think of ways to be able to add more of that kind of content into a newsletter. I think is a good idea.
And though I might regret suggesting it, text messaging is also an idea. I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I signed up for, discount or promotions. I get text messages every day, too many times a day. So it's bordering on harassment sometimes, but it's also another avenue.
I think, I collect cell phone numbers when I can. With that in mind, if that's something in the future we do, I'm not sure. So wait, you're saying you do like it or you don't like
It's a double-edged sword. I mean, I do, and because I can always delete, but if someone's offering me a discount and I've had something in mind and it's out there, and yeah, I think it's great.
Okay, great.
I would like to add a silly diversion. Stephanie keeps mentioning birdhouses, but I think we should have community merchants that recommend bat houses. Because if you have a bat house, you have no idea how many mosquitoes will be destroyed.
We have bat houses in Bay Ridge. Did you know that?
And I have one too.
Little fun fact, by Narrows Botanic Garden on 69th Street and Shore Road, there are bat houses that eat lots of mosquitoes. Part of our, I didn't know that until the construction of the Belt Parkway Bridge.
This is truly an eclectic meeting we're having.
Yes.
We are an eclectic group. I think we have covered a lot. And Michael, it has been and Amanda, it has been an incredibly interesting presentation and has brought a lot to us. And we've got a lot to think about.
Well, we thank you for the input. So it's always helpful for us to figure out how we can work better. So getting the input from the community board is excellent for us. Thank you.
Very nice, Michael.
Great job.
Good job.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Amanda, for being here. And Liz from the Fifth Avenue bid. So Doris, we have another item on the agenda. I know the hour is a little bit later, but I have Anish's Zoning 101 Handbook, and I don't know what the best way to do this is. I did ask Anish to forward to the board a Word version so that we could, make edits. I don't know if it's easier to, have committee members submit them to me, and, Dorothy and I can work through making edits. Do you want me I could share my screen now? Let's see. Does everyone see it?
Yep.
Yep.
So I thought overall, I think this is going to be a great handout when it's all done, but there are many edits that I've spoken to some of you committee members offline about some suggestions. Some members would like to see a little bit more photos. I don't know if we want to just open it up. You want to start page to page? I really don't know, Doris, how you want to.
Well, I will just add my comments that I think it does an incredible job of just focusing on our community, and as was said at the meeting where Anish presented it, there should be standard requiring for all zoning land use committee members and all committee members. But the one thing I think it is missing is he has a picture of we have many zoning categories in our community, and that is not defined. And I think that we should be a section that says, this is what 3.4 means, what all of the zoning categories mean, because that will make it more effective for everyone who reads it.
You mean photograph stars?
At first I thought photographs, and that might be nice, but basically just more a description of each category. And it would be nice if it had a little both. So, but that would be mine. And after I read through it today, I can't remember. Does anyone remember, is there any description of the open space requirements? Because that's something that is often confusing to many.
There's a definition here of open space.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, you got it right.
No. I think there's more specific stuff in the zoning text. But those are my suggestions. This is to include a page that includes what each 3.4, 3.41, 4.58, what each of those means.
You know, Joe,
Yes.
I have a whole bunch of specific recommendations, but they're basically organizational. For instance, you know, insert page numbers. There's no page numbers on here. So when
Okay.
you want to refer to something, you can't say page so-and-so. But I don't know if you want me to go through them or I could send them to you.
Yeah, I think it'd be easier if you send them to me.
Yes.
So
I know Lori, our chair, Lori Willis, she's a great editor. She loves to redline and she had a whole bunch of changes. So I'm gonna send this out in an editable version so that we could.
Oh, I prefer an edible version.
Editable. I don't know if that's a word, but so we can. So if you have, you know, if you want to just jot it down in email, I mean, I jotted down insert page numbers. I like the idea of, you know, more photos. One committee member who's not on the call right now said to me, you know, if we had a digital version that could be sent out, if they could be links, you know, hyperlinks to, you know, articles or you know, the text itself, so that could be, you know, easily usable online. I thought that was a good idea. So how about we start with this? I'll get the version where we could, you know, make edits on it, make notations, and everyone else who has, you know, comments right now, maybe if you want to all send it to me, I'll put it together and we'll, you know, continue to fine tune this. I think it's going to be really good.
my recommendations, Joe.
Okay, great.
And I would encourage every one of you to send your comments to Josephine. Yes, Ann.
I think this was a mammoth undertaking.
Yes.
I'm telling you the truth, it confuses me as to really what the intent was, because it certainly is not 101. It's like senior high school level for the topics that are selected, which I don't know. I feel like it was I don't know who it's for, and I'm not this isn't, it's not a criticism. It's just, I think there's a certain amount of lack of focus as to what this is really about. I also have a concern, even though I'm not a lawyer, that of the accuracy of this stuff, exactly as it appears here, about about updates in the zoning and how that's going to affect this. And when we put this out as fact, if there's a liability that the community planning board takes upon itself. I think it's helpful as a helpful document, but I just wonder about the intent.
No, those are really good points. So the intent of this is really to have board members that were not familiar with zoning terms that are now put on the community board and are reviewing, you know, a host of different, you know, applications, to have something at their fingertips that they can look up. So this, you know, the information here is extrapolated from the Department of City Planning's website, kind of put into a, you know, a quick, you know, hand document for board members to look at and to review before, you know, reviewing a specific application. So if we're going through a ULURP, they can say, you know what, when I first became a board member, you know, I have this, or it's on the community board website, what is the ULURP process, and to simplify it. But if you, you know, that was the goal.
But, you know, Joe, Ann brings up a very good point.
Right.
Number one, I think this should strictly be an internal document for the community board members. But
Yes.
secondly, maybe we need a disclosure page in there stating blah, blah, blah. This is only for community board member use. You know, you brought up an excellent point, Ann.
I wonder if there's a way, you know, one way we can do this, if there's somebody within city planning, I don't know if they would be willing to do this, but to go through it and tell us if there's anything just that's just way off base with it, you know, as sort of like a proofread, somebody. And then another thing in terms of like changing rules, you know, I think if when this is all finalized, if he can give us the file in such a format where if there is a way to tweak the document if there's minor changes that happen within the rules, that we can go into it and make those changes. You know, I think he did this in Adobe InDesign, I'm guessing. You know, if
Yes.
you had access to that file, the raw file, and you know, if there had to be minor tweaks, we can get into it and do it.
And Steve,
Please, Steve, yes.
Darth?
Steve, jump in
Yes,
there.
Steve, we can hear you.
Yeah, it's Steve. I just want to tell Ann that, and these types of documents are put out all over the place. And the issue that you're raising, while it's a good one, it can be easily handled with a disclaimer. Okay,
Mhm.
explaining exactly what the purpose of it is, and also pointing out that that zoning is updated rather frequently, and that you should always double check. You know, and the document itself should be dated as to when it was actually published, when we do it. And then whenever it changes, it should be redated to get the point across. I have no problem with it from a legal point of view.
Thank you, Steve. And I think at the last meeting where Anish presented this, it was very well received by the committee members who were in attendance. And I'm going to hold this up here. It's a lot easier than dealing with this, because it's hard to find it takes work to find out what's appropriate in Bay Ridge in this book.
Yeah, I mean, I think the intent, speaking to what Ann was saying, like I know the zoning book, I think I would prefer, I mean, I'm used to the zoning book, so I know what to look through it, but I was trying to, you know, when I was thinking about when Anish was doing this, how to approach it, it's like he's picking out the things that are very specific to Bay Ridge only, you know, and the things that we always see, you know, so that way you don't have to go through the whole big zoning guide and go through the section with skyscrapers when obviously we don't have to deal with that. So it's sort of like, you know, really just summarizing up the main things that we have to deal with on the community board here in Bay Ridge. That's the way I look at it. But, you know, I guess I'm trying to think of like what Ann's saying, you know, if I'm coming out, if I'm not from here, if it seems disjointed or not. It doesn't seem like it to me, but I don't know.
Yeah, you know, we've had a few board members. Stephanie, you come to mind when you were first a new board member, and it had been a really long time since we had a group of new members who didn't have a background in zoning or in some of the acronyms that comes to mind, where you said there's all these acronyms that we're mentioning in meetings, and I'm hearing that more and more. You know, I would say about 70% of our board really has, you know, probably less than 6 years, you know, as members of community, you know, and zoning can be very overwhelming. And a lot of the terms that we use in zoning can be very overwhelming, like ULURP and, you know, what is FAR and so all of these terms, and there is training available, but not every board member is able to make that training. And then it's often at the board meeting where hands go up and say, I really don't understand what you know, what this means. What does FAR mean? You know, we just did a ULURP application for 9114 Fifth Avenue, and we had a whole host of questions about, you know, how do you calculate the FAR and what is allowed as of right, and what does as of right mean? So hoping that we could produce something where when a board member is, you know, just signs on and is new, we can hand out with a welcoming package and say, you know what, you should read these materials. When we have a ULURP issue, just, you know, take a minute and review it. We should have it online. That's kind of what my thinking was, because I see how difficult it is for many board members to kind of come up to speed. And there's often not that much time to do that. And it's just the nature of being a volunteer. And it's often not until you have an issue before us that you begin to look at that. So having something handy, perhaps on the website, or, you know, that we provide for board members that they can refer to easily instead of having that bigger zoning guide. That was the thinking behind it, that it might be helpful.
And I think it's very effective, which is what was said in the last meeting. What we're asking for tonight is suggestions to improve it, not kibosh it.
I think I like the idea of the photographs. I forgot who brought it up, but I do like the idea of maybe just one page with photographs showing the zoning below and typical, just
right.
typical
Yes.
what you can expect, and maybe in context with another, like a building next door or something like that. I do like that. I think if we go too much, then you start building the very thing that we're
We're
trying.
getting the
to
book
pay for.
back.
Yeah.
I do like, but I do think the visual works. I'm not sure that, like if we do much more in the way of words, okay.
Yeah.
Much more, see how well I expressed that?
How unloyally of you.
Words,
Mhm.
right. I think, oddly enough, it's like all of law. It's all defined by words, which are defined by more words, which are defined, and you will always get those issues. So I think that it's just better to go with the basics that I think most people would understand. And when we get into specific developments, then we can explain further where it has to be explained. I think the idea is a good one to get the basics across to new members and to those people in the public who would be interested.
Okay. Wei, you had a question? I see your hand raised.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Okay, sorry. So being a new member myself, this for me, this was very helpful because I didn't understand a lot of the acronyms and just what everyone was talking about. And I'm always finding myself like behind because I know you send material, on the calendar or like via email, but sometimes I don't get a chance to look at it. So
Right.
as I'm looking through this, I'm like, oh, there's visuals, there's definitions, there's like, it's kind of, for me, it's for me at least, it's much clearer than if I had to read that handbook,
Okay.
So
There you go.
I'm just commenting from a new member perspective.
Great. Thank you.
That's important. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
So
And
this
that's
is a
really
work in
what the-
progress. There's no decision to be made tonight.
A work in
But-
progress.
But I would ask you, any thoughts you have, please send them to Josephine and we will process them.
Just a general comment. I don't know that we want to make it any bigger because, I would be careful about adding anything else to it unless we took something out. There's a lot of meat in there. I've read it a couple of times. So if we make it bigger, we're defeating what we want to accomplish. But we had a new board member speak to how useful it is. So that was a great comment.
Well, I think I understand what you're saying, Dean, but I think Steve and I are on the same page where we say we have many different zoning categories and if we have images and descriptions of what those are, it could be very helpful to every single one of us.
Okay.
So we got time to think and we have
Yes, we
nothing.
do.
This is just informational only.
Correct. All right, everyone. It's a great meeting.
Okay.
And again, kudos to Community Board 10 for learning and mastering the art of Zoom meetings.
Sorry about the glitch, everyone. I don't know what happened there, but we're working on it.
You know how to deal with them, Joe.
Yeah, it's funny that at the Traffic and Transportation Committee, I mentioned to Dorothy that typically it's a waiting room as part of security. You have a waiting room and you admit. But at TNT, everyone just came on. I said, I don't know what happened. Dorothy says, we set them up the same way. I don't know. I don't know. So, these Zoom glitches, but
Well, we are doing very well. And thank you
Yes.
again.
all right. Thanks, everyone.